I'll make you the host, Lindon.
You know when you're the presenter,
Yeah,
are you always in the screen in the box,
I
or does
think
that
so.
change? Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
is it recording?
Yep.
Or do I?
Yeah, all good. So if you want to, you can just start screen sharing and go for it.
All right, cool. All right. Is everyone here? Is Jen and Lele here? Sorry, not Lele, Michael. And if I change the window on the right, can you see if it's bigger or smaller?
Yeah, I think it's only from what I view that records it. So I've got you just you presenting. So it just
Okay,
takes
cool.
that does mean it won't take too much of the screen up. So
Hopefully, hopefully it doesn't take too much. All right. We're going pretty deep in the rabbit hole. This is a no judgment zone. No, Tony's not allowed to fire me. We have an agreement. All right, so first part of this, we're gonna play some Family Feud. Name what comes to mind when you think about Lindon. And we'll see what everyone thinks. This is for you, Amanda. All right, these were the top answers in descending order. Night owl, stays up late. He's always tired in the mornings. He's always injured, battered and bruised. Very mysterious. Wears a lot of black and gray. Only dates women named Talia, Diana, and Selena. 188 centimeters, 95 kilos. Hates crime and corruption. Penchants for theatrics. Strict training regimen. Peak human capabilities. They're my stats. He's genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist, vigilante, and they call him Bruce in the USA for some reason. So, Amanda, you complained at the Christmas party that I wasn't being vulnerable enough. Here it is. I'm the goddamn Batman, Amanda. Believe it or not. So this is my tour de force, my magnus opus. I call it Dead on the Inside, an anthology series of things that broke the Batman's back. Bruce Wayne. All right. So, overview. We go over some housekeeping and memes. We've got volume 1, where we're talking about university cost of living, corporate corruption, and volume 2, VFL umpires and calves, and volume 3, we'll go through a case study. And I probably won't get through all of this because I've got like 150 slides, but we'll see what happens. All righty. So I just want everyone to remember that if you're presenting, there's a rule in your contract that states we need 2 memes per presentation. So JK Jen, really got to lift your game. Amelia has nominated to be the judge, and she's going to be punishing everyone very strictly at the Christmas and July parties. So every presser without a meme, it's a shot or a coin penalty per meme lacking. If you make a meme, you get to allocate, so you get a credit. You can coin or shot someone, and we're just going to leave it at that. So Con was on Wheel of Fortune. He had a chance to win $1 million, and the question was name on visa form. M. Fuck. Got some new research coming out. So we know that extracorporeal shockwave therapy improves tendon stiffness of the patella and common extensor tendon of the elbow. But have you ever thought about, does it improve the stiffness in the bulbospongiosis, ischiocavernosus, corpus cavernosum, and corpus spongiosum? And what we know for erectile dysfunction is all treatments are palliative in nature. So low intensity shockwave is unique that it can actually restore their natural or spontaneous erections. And I did not know that. So Horse is nominated to do a course on it, and he will be starting to shockwave at Essendon. So I really hope you guys wash your shockwave. And funnily enough, there's actually quite a lot of research on shockwaving for erectile dysfunction. I put the most recent systematic review up there. It's got the method and all that. If you look at the bottom here at the results, these are the outcome measures they use, the International Index of Erectile Dysfunction and the erection hardness score. And it's the shockwave in people that have failed normal treatment is
excuse me, can I just sorry, this erection hardness score, what are the classification levels? I just want to hear you say it.
So it's self-assessed, which is I think has flaws in it. And it's scored 1 to 4 based on your hardness, and you need to score greater than a 2 to have an erection adequate for penetration. On the International Index of Erectile Function, so it's a score between 6 to 30 and it's self-assessed. The MCID is 4, and shockwave over 6 months actually goes above the MCID. So very, very effective. Yeah. Look at it this way. I think the evidence is good enough that if this ever happened to me, I'd probably shockwave myself. Why not? Or horse would do it to me. Thanks, horse. All righty. Chapter 1, volume 1, sorry. The Long Halloween. We're going to cover uni and cost of living. The Long Halloween comic series storyline. Batsy Harvey Dent before he goes insane. Jim Gordon team up to rid Gotham of organized crime. However, an unknown assailant is killing the underworld off one by one. And it's focusing on Batman's detective skills. It's very, very film noir. Our villains, Falcone, Holiday, and Two-Face. This is pretty much my life coming into the pandemic. It's pretty grim. Yeah. The rule is if there's no yellow sticker on it, I don't eat it. If you can't air fry it, I don't eat it. And this is my house for several months. And in winter, the heater does not go on. Yes, Amanda.
I think this would be a really, really good time to start a concurrent study as to why Lindon is still single. And I think there's some really, really good qualitative evidence here that we could put together and maybe get a bit of a systematic review going on.
So funnily enough, I actually prepared a presentation on a little bit of that, but I held back because I didn't know if Tony would fire me for it. So I'm giving you guys the PG version. If I have time for my next one, I'll go deep into the rabbit hole. But let's just see if I'm employed in 2 weeks. Okay. So cost of living is grim. Now, what you guys will remember, some of you, is in 2020, we had groundbreaking research. This was a landmark study where we questioned whether buying a bigger pizza was actually more value. So, is 2 small pizzas the equivalent of 1 large pizza? And we didn't know that. So what we did is we did a bit of a study and we looked at pizza economics to see whether bigger is cheaper. This was what we found out. This is the main outcome I want you to look, how much $1 gets you. So we're using a bit of, not quite that, a bit of geometry, so it's just pi r squared. And you can see here that this gets bigger as the size gets bigger. So the value increases, okay? That's our main metric. So a family pizza is cheaper than a small pizza. Now, we wanted to know, does this hold true in the pandemic? That was 2019 research. So we did an updated synthesis to see whether it holds. It's exactly the same design, except here, we're looking at specials of a pizza, because you never know whether you're getting dicked with a special. All right, so we've updated it. Advances in pizza economics. Does parity still hold in unprecedented times? This is my local pizza store. And as you can see, that gets bigger as the size gets bigger. So that's a good thing. That's holding at parity. So $1 gets you 10.46 square inches of pizza. Now, what's really confusing is they have 3 deals, 3 large, 4 family, Monday, Tuesday deal, and that's the price. Every single deal is better than a single pizza. And what we also realize is the best deal is 4 family pizzas for $56.90. That's the best value. But does everyone really want $56.90 of family pizza? So if you can see here on Monday, Tuesday, the large is $10.90, and that's actually pretty good value there. So our conclusions: pizza is an ethical industry. It's got an inverse relationship between size and cost. All pizza deals trumps individual purchases, and it's only economically viable to purchase pizzas on a Monday or Tuesday in Mulgrave. If you buy it Wednesday to Sunday, it may lead to financial ruin. And I've written here a pause. So the other day I was at Snitz and I was in line. There was 2 people in front of me, and Snitz have their chip packets and they've got certain prices, and I'm looking there and a small is not that much smaller than a medium and large. And I'm like, that can't be right. So I whipped out my phone, got the calculator out, and I actually figured out that it is not cheaper to buy it small. So that leads to the now groundbreaking, new leading gold standard research on, does parity hold in corporations when you can control the food? So you can't control food. Chicken is different to the cost of fish. And there's also preferences that you can't standardize. But what happens if you can standardize it? So we've got the Super Chop study, the superior economic reforms, controlled hot chips price in unprecedented times. These are our methods. So we chose the humble spud as an internal control to look at price gouging across multinational big corporate. And if you think about a chip, it's three things: potato, oil, and salt. So you can't really change it that much. Yes, you can get technical, you put rosemary on it and all that crap, chicken salt, but it's pretty standardized. So what the researchers did is we got 6 fast food chains and we chose their chips and the sizes, and we analyzed to see whether there was an inverse parity. So as the size increased, the cost per dollar should increase as well. Wait, decrease. I got a bit confused. If a chain was found to breach parity, they were labeled cheating dog-ass pricks, and the primary outcome is what $1 gets you, price divided by kilojoules. Cool. Let's see. So on the left, this is a really easy example. Large, regular, $5, $7, 296 kilojoules, 1200 kilojoules. It's really obvious that large is cheaper. If we look here, this is it looking at onion rings, 670 calories, $4.90. For exactly double the price, we get 1100 calories. So you can see there, it's actually cheaper to buy small. Some of the corporations, they're absolutely dogging us. So let's see what we found. This is an example at Snitz. You just see that when you order it on the menu. Okay, that's on their website, and this is what comes up on the app. So it's very confusing. You don't know if you're getting good value. That's a sweet potato. All right. So this is the groundbreaking tour de force of research, the Super Chop study. And if you understand those authors, you are very, very good. All right, this is Snitz. Original, sweet potato, original online, sweet potato. Now, as you can see, yellow is the cheapest outcome of what $1 gets you. Yes, you get more on a family, but I've highlighted that in green because not all of the Snitz sell family deals. So in every single size at Snitz, it's actually cheaper to buy small. Outrageous. What about Mickey D's? Mickey D's looks like it's doing the ethical thing, but they have a hack on their app where you can get 860 kilojoules for $2, and they're not even hiding it. It's literally there. It's stupid. So it's actually cheaper to buy small Mickey D chips. Keffers, ethical. KFC, regular large gets you more. HJs, if you buy it online, it's ethical. If you buy it on the app, they have a regular for $2. Hold on, someone's here. Hey. Give me 1 second. Maters, is this being recorded?
Yep.
Yeah, apparently it is. Yeah, cool. Soon. Yeah. Alrighty. So $2 is, sorry, HJs, cheaper to buy a regular on the app. Guzman, not at parity. Lord of the Fries, this is actually really interesting stats. If you buy it online, it's cheaper to buy a regular. Every other chip, though, you'd think you'd be getting exactly the same, but it's different pricing whether you get a classic, chunky, or shoestring. So you're actually getting ripped off if you don't buy classic. So this is the summary of everything, and the big conclusion is the discussion is the packaging may be limited by what's called the VPE, the vertical packaging effect. So if you think about packaging, you can only stack things vertically, yeah? And then you can't really go much more, unless you have a second scaffold there to increase the volume. So to combat that, you need a box so you can horizontally stack chips. And this is this is the concept of it. So if you can keep stacking it through here, you can't go any higher. So if you get a large, you can't really go higher because you don't have a base through there. If you get a box, you can horizontally stack it and get more volume. Groundbreaking research. So this is the conclusion. Chippies is the Wild West of fast food, unlike ethical pizzas. Out of the 6 food chains explored, only Keffers was not dogging you. Minimum value per dollar is about 430 kilojoules. You want that, and these are the best values. Awesome. Let's move on to some clinical stuff. Volume 2, Nightfall. So this is the VFL Umstead Calves. Christopher Nolan used this storyline in the last Batman movie. So Bane releases the inmates of Arkham Asylum. Batman reels them in one by one over several months, experiencing severe physical and mental burnout. When he returns to the Batcave, Bat ambushes him and easily beats him and breaks the bat. So, breaking in, that scene there is iconic in comic book lore, and Batman is left to fend for himself. So, let's have a look at this. This is the match loads of a VFL umpire, and this is only using at about 4 to 6 weeks of data because we only got GPSs late in the season. If you think about an AFL umpire, they're exactly the same as a team sport athlete, except they can't interchange. So if we look at their total volume, they do the entire game. Yet, similar to AFL, 15 kilometers, meters per minute's quite high. These are their speed zones, similar to AFL. They rarely get up into that top speed. So, sorry, I don't know why that's going. I recorded this for the umps and I had to go over it. But cool. Sorry, guys. Let me see if I can fix this. Okay. So for the first time ever, the umpires was paper-based. So you literally had to write down hand notes, and it was absolutely medieval. They decided to upgrade it by using Google Sheets. I still think it's medieval. And what we did at the end of the season is we were able to go through all our injuries and to look at data trends. So this is what it looked like. And we could splice this and just sort it out on Google Sheets. So our umpires are classified as field, boundary, or gold. Boundary is considered the most running because all they're doing is running around the boundary line. Field has more change of direction because they're in the arc of play. The way we do our lists is we have a senior and a development. These were all our injuries. So we have about 160 to 180 umpires, and we had 73 injuries. And if you look there, you can't see any obvious trends. So it's about 50-50. When you splice this based on their list compared to the type, there is a small trend increasing for field and development. And that's a recording I haven't deleted. So the development guys are much younger. Sorry, guys, we've still got some recordings going. I might present like this to make it a bit easier, just for this part. If we go to our individual data, so this is deleting all recurrent injuries and people that present more than once. The trend isn't as obvious. There's a small outlier with our young field umpires. When we looked at when our athletes were being injured, our preseason probably started in February. So I wrote down when they thought they got injured, not when they presented to physio. If we look at this, you can see here that we had a disproportionate amount of injuries in March. And last year, that was the first season that they came back after COVID, and they were asked to immediately umpire AFL, NAB games. Some of them didn't get a proper preseason. So if we think about when AFLW started and all of that, it was pretty much bang there. So 2 weeks of training, start doing matches. We also classified the injury types we were seeing. You can see here at the bottom, that's the vast chunk of our injuries. And it definitely makes sense. Like, yeah, we're getting no shoulders, we're running athletes. So majority of our injuries are soft tissue tendinopathies, almost 2/3. They were pretty evenly dispersed throughout the year. Our tendinopathies, they tended to happen more at the start of the season. Our worst time loss injury was a bone stress injury. So we had a couple of those before the umps came back to actual training. When we looked at different parts of the body and their injury sites, this is what we got. It's a little bit hard to see, but to classify things as a dichotomous answer, I looked at everything below and above the knee. So to look at below the knee, this is what the things that we were highlighting. And if you get that as a total, 39 injuries above the knee, 34 injuries below. So majority of our injuries are below the knee. So and this makes sense. So we're getting a bucket load of shin splints, Achilles, plantar fascia, foot bone, foot stressies. Majority of our injuries below the knee happened in the first 2 months of training. So very, very much at the start. And our summary, it's pretty much there. So I presented that to them, and this is what it was like. This is me. This is me at the umpires. 180 umpires, 1 physio. Sam May wasn't there half the time. No one does calf raises. We had a pretty crap preseason. So if we're explaining our trends, most of us would know this. This is from Tim Gabbett's group, but stronger athletes are more resilient, as are fitter and faster athletes. But the biggest multiplier of injury risk is relative strength. Some of you might have seen this one. This looked at people that cramped and didn't cramp in a marathon. The ones that did strength training had a significantly decreased chance of cramping in the marathon. Okay. Sorry, guys. So in any sport you look at, there is a spike of injuries in the preseason and the start of season. And if you look at AFL data, then it becomes rounds 12 to 17. So when we're in the heart of the season, if you think about how you get someone AFL fit, on the weekend, you're going to be running between 12, 16K. The rest of the week's recovery, you might be running 6 to 8K. So you're doing more than 50% of your weekly load on the weekend during that game. And if you're training a distance runner, you would never have your long run that far. So your chronic fitness is going to decay over time, and the emphasis is on recovery. So it makes it quite tricky. A lot of people have seen this. The big workhorse in the body is your soleus. Okay, so it's constantly working. It's punching out a lot of force. A couple of you would have seen this slide. As our running speeds increase, some muscles exponentially increase in their work rate, like the hamstring. Yeah, so it's going higher the faster we run. If we look at soleus gastroc, it doesn't increase that much. It's used at a similar work rate. It does not increase the faster we go. This slide here is really important when we're thinking about fatigue. So this is a study looking at semi-competitive middle distance runners, and red here is your plantar flexors, so your ankle. Gray there is your glutes, hip extensors, and blue is your knee extensors, your quads. They ask these people to do a 3-minute run test to failure. So they're running at a speed that they can't hold. This is 0 to 33%, 0 to 66, 0 to 100%. And as you can see, as you fatigue, the y-axis is absolutely changing positive work. As we fatigue, your calves are deteriorating in their positive work rate, and we're compensating in our quads. So this is the system that just doesn't stop working. I'm going to go through a little bit of Brady and Tanya's research. I've just stolen this off the internet. I'm not sure if people have seen this, but when I saw it, it was pretty groundbreaking for me. So, and I've ripped off about 3 presentations from Phil Glasgow and Craig Purdom. So we know a fair bit about the calf. The soleus is the most commonly injured calf muscle, and we get more medial injuries compared to lateral. If we look at calf muscle strain injuries, it's across all sports, but it's prevalent in sprinters and power athletes, but it's more prevalent in distance runners. This is the injury stats of the last world champs. I think it was, in the 2019 ones, I believe. It's confusing, but all I want you to notice is these are sprints, more power-based athletes. And then as we go further, this is our distance running and our marathon. Orange is posterior, thigh. So that's your hamstrings. So we're getting more injuries in the sprints. And then blue is your calf. So you can see the blues trending upwards and the blues trending upwards in the males as well. So we generally all know about those trends. This is the research that Brady Green released a few years ago. Okay, and this is what they found. So this was looking at I think the 2016 to 2019 AFL season. They had 184 calf strains on their soft tissue index. Majority of them were Soleils. Majority of them were index injuries. They had 35 recurrences. If we look at their index injuries, significantly more Soleils. If we look at the recurrences, significantly more Soleils. This is a really nice picture. I didn't actually realize how big the soleus was in terms of its cross-sectional area. So that's the soleus there. And then you can see the medial and lateral gastroc in this one. So the soleus, it makes up a huge chunk of the calf complex, 230 compared to 68 and 28 on medial and lateral gastroc. This is when they were getting their injuries. So match versus training, greens match, blues training. And you can see in the index, it's 50-50. Soleus injuries are 50-50. In the recurrent injuries, majority of them are actually happening at training. So they're breaking down before they return to their games. If you look at the gastroc injuries, majority of them are happening in the match. This is when they're getting injured. So you can see big chunk of injuries happening in the first quarter of a footy game. That's all not that much. And then we're getting no mechanism. So post-match soreness. So this is that concept of the silent strain. You get through the game, you feel good. After the game or the next day, you get a bit of tightness, you get some DOMS that doesn't go away, and you get a bit of pain. So majority of our injuries are happening after the game. So that's silent strain. If we look at the when AFL footballers are getting injured, it's similar trends to what I showed you before with the umpires. So that's the off season. Nothing happens through there. This is our pre-season. A couple of recurrences. We have a spike when we're really ramping up into the heart of the season, and then we at the first few rounds, and then near the back end, that's when we're getting our spike in injuries and recurrences. Okay. Tanya and Brady looked at the mechanism of injury. Orange is soleus, green is gastroc. So if we look at soleus, nil incident, gradual onset. So the soleus, we're seeing a trend where it's going without a mechanism. If we look at the gastroc, yeah, you are getting someone gradual onset, but look here when we're doing our more explosive stuff. So high intensity running, acceleration. So if you're doing something explosive and you feel it, there's probably an increased chance of the gastroc. If it goes silently, it's an increased chance it's a soleus. Looking at index versus recurrent injuries, we're seeing here with the indexes that there isn't really a mechanism for it. We're looking at our recurrences here, and we're probably getting it wrong in your steady state. Sorry, when you're returning an athlete back. So these are their running speeds. If we look at what they did is they broke down whether there was an injury in a running related activity or non-running related activity. And if a player was injured with a running mechanism, they had a higher return to play time. Yeah. And that was significant. If we look at the outcomes after they return, so these are the outcomes they used: pain-free walking, running at 90% speed, return to full training, and return to play. Okay. Blues index, reds recurrence. At every return to sport marker, it takes longer if you've had a recurrence. And I'm not sure if the medical teams were being more conservative with that as well. This one here is looking at soleus versus gastroc. There's a trend that if you have a soleus injury, it's leaning towards being a longer recovery. I can't remember whether that one was statistically significant though. I'd say it would be. Oh no, I wrote here not significant. Sorry, apologies. This is actually where it gets really interesting. So this looks at cumulatively when people were getting their recurrent injuries. So they monitored the AFL for 2 seasons, and they considered less than 2 months an early recurrence. So 54% of their recurrent injuries were within the first 2 months. If we look at the recurrence and break it down, 20% were prior to the median time to return to play. 91% involved the soleus. And the 2 trends they found was it tended to be in older athletes or more games played. So this is the summary of the research that Brady and Tanya did. So a lot of this was pretty well known before they looked into it. What's really, really interesting is they did an MRI study using the same data as well. So they were doing this one concurrently. So got exactly the same thing. I believe they got this done at Olympic Park, but these were all the things that they were looking at. Where it was injured, the location of the injury, the strain position, medial, lateral, superficial, superior, inferior, sorry, and the depth of it. They looked at the presence and extent of aponeurotic disruption, presence of waviness, yes, no, length of edema, and whether there was a previous injury, scar tissue present. Okay. Don't worry about all of this. Look at this one on the right. These are our main outcomes. Okay. So those things I mentioned before, return to full training, running at 90% max speed, pain-free walking, return to play, and if there was a recurrence, when it happened. This is looking at your the location of injury. So this was looking at a lot of the aponeurosis tears. I've got the key here with everything that they're talking about. The big takeaway from this slide is it doesn't really matter where the injury is. There's no major trends. There's no statistically significant trends with the tissue being injured. So the anatomical location of injury was not associated with time to return to play. This here, red, is if there was an aponeurosis injury. Blue is if there was not. We've got our different locations, central, lateral, and medial. And then we've got the posterior, anterior, anterior medial and anterior lateral. So if you're confused, go back, just pause this slide and have a think about it. But they wanted to look at trends to see pretty much whether an aponeurosis injury was more severe than not having an aponeurosis injury. And you can pretty much tell that, yep, it is. So you can see here at that virtually every point except some funky trends in the gastroc. If you've got an aponeurosis injury, your return to every outcome, 90% max speed, return to full training, return to play, it is significantly increased. If we look at soleus only, if you have a soleus injury and an aponeurosis disruption, it's going to affect all return to sport outcomes. So no, if you just look at a black and white aponeurosis disruption versus none, if you've got an aponeurosis injury, even if it's a bee's dick, you're going to have a longer return to sport. They looked at how much disruption was present. No aponeurosis disruption, less than 50%, 50 to 99%. You see a small trend going upwards, but it's not statistically significant. Okay, so it pretty much came down to severe aponeurosis disruption versus none. It increases your return to play time quite significantly. Okay, what they also did is all of those things that I mentioned before at the start, they compared it to some other outcomes they wanted to look at, and they just wanted to look at trends and see what they could find. If you look at sorry, I'm going to go back one. If you look at this, this is a univariate analysis. So this is just looking at one trend compared to that trend in isolation. And you can see the arrows. they're the ones that were found to be statistically significant. So running mechanism, soleus injury, aponeurosis injury present, yes, no, and severe aponeurosis injury. Now, if you do a multivariate analysis where you can be comparing them amongst everything else, those trends tend to disappear, and the only outlier is running mechanism. So if you have if you're running and you feel it go, you've got a increased return to play statistically. When they looked at the soleus only, these are what they found to be statistically significant in a univariate analysis. So running mechanism, aponeurosis disruption present, yes, no. And when they looked at multivariate, I think I didn't write it down. Apologies. Sorry, guys. So the other thing that they looked at was the location of a recurrent versus index injury. So recurrent versus first time. Have a look here. Same muscle anatomical location and position. So if a recurrence happened, 40% of them were exactly the same spot. When a recurrence happened, the vast majority of the injuries were also the same muscle, but a different location and position. If you look at just early recurrence, the majority of your early recurrences are happening at exactly the same spot, same muscle, anatomical location, and position. Yeah, remember that's the 2 months before, within 2 months of return. So after 2 months of returning back to sport. If we look at aponeurosis versus no aponeurosis, if you have an aponeurosis injury, your chances of recurrence are significantly higher, 63 versus 37%. When we look at the severity of the aponeurosis disruption, majority of the recurrences are the same severity or less severe. So it's actually not making it worse. It just pings again with that aponeurosis tissue. Now, if we look at the risk of early recurrence, so happening within the first 2 months of returning back to sport, univariate analysis, those top 3 are the ones that were found statistically significant. If we look at the multivariate analysis, only those 2 have been found to be statistically significant. So older age and history of ankle injury. What they also found as well, this is a risk of overall recurrence. If you have a previous calf strain and you're older, that's statistically significant. If we look at the recurrence over 2 years, yep, and then you also have that aponeurosis disruption there. After they did everything, they also looked at their return to play times. And I didn't quite understand this, but the time taken to return to play, it did not actually impact the risk of recurrent calf strain. So I found it a bit conflicting that we know a soleus injury is going to be worse. We know an aponeurosis injury is going to be worse, but the time taken to return to play, it didn't necessarily mean that you were going to have a recurrent calf strain injury. So I thought if you had an aponeurosis injury, you'd be more conservative, you'd hold them back, but we're not seeing that trend. I had a chat to Jay about this, and he said if they redid this study, it would probably show a few different things, because this study only goes up to 2019. And when this was released, a lot of AFL clubs changed their policy. So he was pretty much saying if there's an aponeurosis injury, they go very conservatively. And I was also wondering, how do you apply this clinically? Because we don't MRI everyone. And his response was, you can't. So if you're in AFL Clubland, you've got an MRI, you can do it, you can make a call. For us at Private World, we can't really do much about it. We have to make a call and say, do we think it is Yes, no. Is it a recurrence? Has it happened recently? Then it probably is an aponeurosis injury. Do we want to get an MRI? Does the athlete value it? If not, then we got to make a call. Do we do a normal rehab or do we hold them back longer? So this is the summary of Tanya and Brady's research. The location of injury wasn't that valuable for prognosis. So it actually went against a lot of stuff found on the hamstring and intramuscular tendon injuries. Mechanism of injury, whether it's a running injury, and MRI findings, having aponeurosis tissue damage or not, that can increase return to play timeframe. And that's consistent with all the other MRI studies that's looked at that those contributing factors. And clinically, older age, previous ankle injury, previous calf muscle strain are associated with an increased risk of recurrence. Cool. The aponeurotic tissue is asensory. So that's why it's so difficult to diagnose clinically in without an MRI. So I'm just wondering, could that be contributing to more silent soleus strains? Is that why we're having poorer recurrence rates? Because the athlete will be feeling good, their tissue won't have healed, and then they're going to go and re-tear that tissue or re-tear a different part of their calf. So the aponeurotic tissue is asensory. I'm not going to go too deeply into this because I think everyone does it pretty well. But this is data mined from Craig Purdon, where he's gone through lots of different studies and he's gone through the peak loading rate in the calf Achilles complex. And you can just see here, a lot of the things that we do in the gym, it's just nothing compared to the explosive, high intensity, high speed running. If we look at tensile loads, it's pretty similar. The stuff we can do in the gym, it only prepares our athletes so much compared to the running they do. I think all of the presenters talk about how they rehab their calves, and there's probably a couple of trends. They just talk about rehabbing the calf as well isometrically, because the calf works in a quasi-isometric way at all speeds of running. This looks at the vector in the calf at different speeds. So if it's higher, there's more vertical force. If it's pointing more horizontally, there's more horizontal force. So I think the big thing out of this is if you're just giving calf raises, you're only training them in a vertical force. So remember, we want to be training them in a horizontal force. So you might need to be doing some leaning calf raises on a wall, or heavy sled is pretty awesome to get them in that attack angle and pushing through there. This picture, don't worry about it, just look at this. This looks at braking force as well, and the soleus has quite a big component in braking force. So if you're just training someone to go forwards, you've got to remember you need to train them to stop and also run backwards, which is one of the biggest things we need to do at the vehicle umpires, because a lot of their running volume is bouncing the ball running backwards or changing direction to make sure they're always looking at the ball. This is what Phil Glasgow does with his Irish rugby union boys. They go through their protocol, and it's very structured. So they start off isometrically, they're going into their isotonic, they have to hit strength outcomes. So that's some of the stuff Jay's talked about, 1.5 times your body weight, 2.5 times your body weight on a standing calf raise. They go through a multitude of multi-directional jumps, and they're very good at changing their training their sidestepping, and like a sled push pull where you're going sideways. So you're getting that medial and lateral forces through there. So it's not absolutely groundbreaking, but they're very, very thorough in what they do. This looks like it's detailed and it's going to take forever. They'll do that in 30 days. So they'll go through it quite quickly. Cool. The last really cool slide from the presentation was, this is a study from 2020, and just have a look here. This is a 10K run fresh, 10K run very tired, 10 1K repeats in spikes. Here is the accumulated ground reaction force and body weights. When we're cooked, we get 10-15% more accumulated ground reaction force in there. So we're smashing that bone, we're smashing that muscle through there. So I had a lot of umpires that would do a game, they cover 14, 16 Ks, change of direction, accelerations, they'd be cooked. And the next day they go on a 10 to 15 K recovery run. And I'm just like, what are you smoking, dude? Like you cooked. What, in what sense do you recover running 10 to 15 Ks? So that's a big issue we had. And we actually can't tell them not to do that because of their enterprise bargaining agreement. When they're not at training, they can theoretically do whatever the hell they want. So we can only control them for like 2 hours, maybe 3 hours a week. Game day is chaos, whatever happens. And then they theoretically can do anything. So some of our athletes are running 25, 30 Ks. Others are running 80 to 100 Ks a week. And it's really hard to get a standardized program because you just get different physiques, different fitness levels, different accumulated volume. So that's a bit of a mess. That's the end of chapter 2. Chapter 3. This is a case study, and I'm not going to finish this, so I'll do as much as I can. Chapter 3, a death in the family. This is actually a really cool comic book arc. So the second Robin, Jason Todd, is captured, tortured, and killed by the Joker. This this comic book series was groundbreaking and controversial because they killed off a famous sidekick. And what they did is a lot of people didn't like the second Robin. So DC set up a 900 number where you could call up and vote whether you wanted him to die or to stay alive. And the public narrowly decided for Robin to be killed. And like I mentioned, yeah, one of the most important iconic moments in comic book history. All right, so I'll go for a few more minutes. This is the iconic scene, and that's the 900 number. All right, our case study. Monday, 2021, so 1.5 years ago, I get a call and I'm told my father has fallen from his office because he's got an exercise bike there and he sometimes rides that. And that's all I've got. When I go there, CSB is his initials. He cannot move his right leg. He's got good recall and he does not know how he got on the ground, but he remembers what he ate for lunch. He can smile, he can lift his arm up. He's got everything through there. So call an ambulance, blood pressure's 200 over 140. We go to Box Hill Hospital. What do we think's happened? Right, no answers. Cool. So a stroke is diagnosed and TPA is tissue plasmin, I can't say that word, plasmic, yep. It's a blood thinner. And the next day, I get a call at 5:15 a.m. and I'm very shitty because I go to work at 8 a.m. the next day. And he's moved to the Alfred because he suffered a hemorrhagic stroke. So the TPA, the blood thinner, it's meant to obviously break down the clot in the brain, but he's had a hemorrhagic stroke and that's thinned out the system. So he's been transferred to the Alfred because they need neurosurgery options just in case. If we're thinking about the pathophysiology, there was a lot of unknowns at the time because AstraZeneca was known for its clots, and he got the AstraZeneca jab 3 days before. So we're wondering, has this caused his stroke? The doctors told us that the AstraZeneca clots, they affected the venous system, whilst a stroke is in the arterial system, and his one was in the arterial system. He's had AF for 10 years, and AF causes rapid and irregular beating of atrial chambers of the heart. What happens is because the contractions are disorganized, we can get stagnant blood in the left atrium, and the lack of movement will cause it to thrombus, and it'll mobilize and become an embolus. And another increased risk factor is also alcohol if you have AF through there. So Dad's not a heavy drinker, but he likes a Friday drink. And I'm going to stop it there, everyone. Part 2 is what happens. We'll have to find out. Cool. Any questions in the last 5 minutes? No, anything carbs? Surely. Alrighty, cool. I'll leave it there. And if you have any questions, chuck it through and I will hopefully finish part 2. If not, I'll record a Zoom video. I'll catch you guys later.
Thanks, Lyndon.
Thanks, Lyndon.
Thanks,
Cheers, mate.
Lyndon.